I'm gonna go live. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Show. I'm here with the president of the IBM TV, Pod TV network, Kim Calhoun, and also Peter Bennett, who's also you see on the Wall Street Hackers. And today we're going to discuss energy and what the energy movements are in the energy industry. We also know that CERAWeek is going to be coming up very shortly. A lot of people don't know what that is. And of course, I'd like Kim to introduce CERAWeek to let people know what it is. If you're in the energy industry, you all know what it is. But if you're not, you may not even know what CERAWeek is. So maybe, Kim, you can give us a little background about CERAWeek.
Well, Nick, maybe you can also back me up on some of what I'm about to say, but they don't just provide my favorite coffee mug of the year with the date for next year's, but CERAWeek is where they gather all the world leaders in gas, oil, energy for 1 week in Houston, Texas, and they spend this time discussing all of the energy issues that we have today, solutions, things that they're doing, how they're doing it. But it's just a resource hub for all the world leaders to gather. And it's amazing. The energy, no pun intended, but the energy there is just so exciting. And it's one of my favorite conferences of all times because people are just so respectful there. Politics play a big game in our lives everywhere, every day. It may be somewhat there, but we seem to be a little less focused on the politics and what can we do to make things better, improve the quality of life. That is really big there. And Daniel Yergin, he really influences a good, healthy conversation. And this is something we need every year. And Nick, I mean, you did a little bit of research on this conference as well.
Yeah, it's the second most prestigious conference in the world behind the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Mm-hmm. So for people that know, the number one conference is in Davos. So it's the World Economic Forum. The number two prestigious forum in the world that's been around for a long time is CERAWeek, which they mainly focus on energy issues. Now, something interesting on the Wall Street Hackers a year ago, we talked about getting into energy stocks. My fund portfolio was grateful enough to listen to Peter and push everything to energy. Then Dennis Stearns, who's a professional money manager who manages well over $1 billion in assets, said there was only 2 classes out of 95 that went up last year. Everyone else went down. It was energy and commodities, and that was it. And I was going, yes.
2 out of 95.
Everything else went down, and yes, my fund portfolio went up. But it was 2 of all the other classes in 2022. So I'm listening to Peter very carefully this year, since he hit right last year, as to what to invest in, what not to invest in on a going forward basis, and that's also on the Wall Street Hackers. So we'll see where energy takes us. But Peter, you have some opinions about energy, hopefully coming up this year, 2023.
Oh, sure. From the investment perspective, then we'll cover the energy stories of the week. But, first of all, nobody can really predict energy in the short run, just like the stock market, and it can go anywhere. Anybody who says 100%, I just saw Ken Fisher saying there's almost I think it's a semi-quote or whatever, but he said there's 0% chance of a recession or almost like that. I'm going, what is he talking about? So many people think that it's very likely, including me. I think it's almost inevitable, but I'm not going to say it's 0, almost no chance, almost impossible is what he said. But the problem is it's staggering what's been going on since 2014 in the energy sector. And because of so many different things, the Biden administration particularly has put taken 125 actions to stifle energy. We've heard of some, the Keystone pipelines, and I understand why, by the way, they want to do it. But the problem is climate change is going the wrong way in the last 2 years. In 21, there was more carbon put out in the world and in the United States than in 20. In 22, more carbon in the world and in the United States, both again, So it's a terrible energy strategy that creates more carbon and devastates the economy. So far, it hasn't been totally devastating, but when you have years and years of underinvesting in oil and gas properties, and oil and gas takes 5 to 7 years to develop, and some of them take 15 years, it's not going to be like when we realize what we've done, oh, now we've got the energy. It's not going to happen overnight. These are slow processes. And so I have no idea where energy is going to go. And I hate to be negative about it, but I've never seen anything like this. I mean, I wasn't really following the markets in the 70s, but I think this could, at least you have to prepare for the possibility that energy, first of all, is the only sector to invest in, because maybe oil goes to, $8 a gallon, cars, maybe 10. Look, in Europe, it's already 10. Who knows how high? Because if the USAC, one of the investments I've mentioned on the show, said maybe a year ago that the oil and gas industry are putting in 40% too little capital each to just keep it where it is. So if oil and gas is going down by 40% or 20% or whatever, because the projects aren't there, and worldwide demand is still going up for oil and gas. So it's a huge problem. And from the climate perspective, because we won't have enough oil and gas, and we haven't, they're using more coal. And they're shipping manufacturing overseas to more polluting countries. It's terrible energy strategy. And they're demonizing oil and gas companies, which are using 10% now of their budgets towards environmental projects like sequestration, which very well may be the solution to the energy crisis. It's technology that may solve it in terms of the climate, if there's, but they're the ones who are probably going to develop it. They have the technology and they're putting in huge amounts of money. So, the whole approach is terrible. So a couple of quick energy stories, and then we're going to get into our debate, which is going to be, I'm sure, a good one, because we're going to discuss fracking. Is it a positive or negative? And I already know Kim's position. And then we'll talk about Nick's and mine. So a few energy stories of the week that I thought were interesting. Number one, gas prices were up 35% in the U.S. to an average of $3.45. Just 2 weeks ago, I've said China's going to reopen, and it might be soon. And they did. They seem to be open right now. I just said it 2 weeks ago, but it could have taken longer, but I knew it would happen, and that's going to drive energy back up. And then also, I said 2 weeks ago on Wall Street Hackers that it may not be a warm winter. We've had a very warm winter for the first half, but maybe the second half will be colder. And if not, eventually we're going to have a cold winter. I mean, these are certainties. It's not always going to be warm. And so energy is a big issue for the country. Another story, India has now increased its crude oil imports by 33 times. Basically, and that's just since Putin launched his war in the Ukraine. So the Russians are selling India crude at about 32% discount, and India is becoming the refinery to Europe and part of the rest of the world, because they're just refining it and reselling it back to the West. So it is hurting Russia, but India is doing very well as the middleman, for sure. Very good strategy, I guess. Of course, if they weren't buying it all, it would have hurt Russia more. But on the other side, the West wouldn't have any energy at all, or barely. Another story, I just happened to be driving in New Jersey the other day, and I was on 95, and I noticed, I'm driving by refineries, and it smelled a little. But then I realized, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was terrible. It was unbearable. So it just shows that the technologies, for the oil and gas companies have improved, and they're working on it, and they're spending so much of their budgets on it now, which is another reason they're not putting it in the fields. So, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to the oil and gas industry. I'm not saying they're angels, but on the other side, the technologies are amazing because you could barely smell it. I mean, even in the worst areas on 95. And last story before we get into the discussion is, for the first time in over a year, it's actually less expensive to operate a gas vehicle, not buy or anything, but just to operate a gas vehicle over an EV, because gas prices are down, I believe, very temporarily. And also EVs use electricity anyway, which are 80% fossil fuels. So it's strange because you say, I'll buy an EV, I'll spend a lot of front, or I'll risk the issues with the batteries or the driving. It's like, but you're not necessarily saving anything today. So it's interesting. It is evolving. So we get into the discussion of the week, which should be lively. The question is fracking a positive or negative for the world? And I'm going to hand it over to, for the opinions of my panel. But first, I'll just give the definition as a background. Usually I give a little more background, but I just want to give the definition. So
Wall Street frackers.
What fracking is. So yeah, we'll do Wall Street frackers next. The process of it. So fracking is the process of injecting liquid at high pressure into subterranean rocks, boreholes, etc., so as to force open existing fissures and extract oil or gas. And it allows much more production for the same areas and wells. So that's the definition of fracking. And we're going to go with Kim's opinion first, because I know where you stand, Kim. We started talking about it a little bit on one of the other energy shows. Kim, what do you think of fracking? Oh, no.
Turn your mic on.
Kim, I can't hear you.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
So my opinion isn't just based on me reading about this. I actually experienced it. Went to the oil rigs. I was doing some research with one of my patents, and I went to the fracking sites, to the oil rigs. We sat and had these in-depth discussions at a high executive level, very high executive level. And SAS, the company SAS, was involved with this too, because it's dangerous. Fracking is extremely dangerous, more so than just the normal oil rig. And the other thing that you don't bring up.
Wait, Kim, could you explain what dangerous to the workers or dangerous to who?
Dangerous on the site, dangerous to the property, dangerous to the workers. The explosion rates and everything are far more higher. The sites are more dangerous. It's just they're very dangerous compared to anything. The data shows that they're more dangerous, leaks and everything. But the other thing that they don't discuss very often is fracking isn't just drilling down. Okay, fracking goes down a little bit,
Absolutely.
And then it goes out to other
Absolutely.
people's property. So it could be, you can have a gas line pumping under your house. And there's not a darn thing you could do about it, because our deeds don't give us, from heaven to hell, ownership. So, yeah. So, I mean, how would you like to have one of these things? It might be under your house right now and you don't know, but there's just way too much going on. You're putting chemicals into the ground to draw out things that are naturally there in our surface, the natural surface. So I think we need to really just start putting our energies, no pun intended, into research for things that are a little bit more natural. And I know that, as you discussed, in order to do storage for solar and stuff like that, we have to have batteries. But I think that if we used our brains a little bit more, we could find better alternatives for generating other powers that we could use without having to take from under. But fracking is very dangerous. I recommend anyone to go out and visit a site. And watch a change shift. The change shift alone will break your heart. Just hearing their prayer of, or speaking with some of these people who have to.
What the fatality rate is in the fracking business. We could research that. It's interesting. I mean, on one side, before we get Nick's opinion, I just want to throw this out. I'm not justifying anybody dying, but coal mining is dangerous. Football is dangerous, but people are paid for it. So, I'm guessing that, and I'm not arguing here, because I get what you're saying about that. And there's it's a complex issue, but, I'm guessing people are paid more in that industry for that risk. But I wonder, maybe next show we'll look into that. How many deaths have there been because of fracking as compared to oil? And it's a great subject to explore. Nick, what do you think of fracking?
Well, I believe in better living through technology. So I have no problem with fracking, just like I have no problem with drugs in general. Okay, but all drugs.
Wait, Nick, I have to clarify. What kind of drugs? I'm joking. Let's not answer that question.
Some of the drugs that are prescribed to me.
Yeah, I understand.
Call side effects. There's no drug that you can take that doesn't have.
Well, that's
side
true.
effects.
You're right.
The only question is, what is the extent of the side effects? Is it worth it to take the drug minus or plus the side
Right.
effect.
You're saying cost benefit
It's
analysis.
cost benefit. Okay. And the same thing with fracking. It's a cost benefit analysis you have to look at.
Mhm.
Yes, there is a cost in the fact that you're taking good, clean water, now making it dirty water. Okay. That may be a long time before you can reverse it. But there's a benefit to it also, Peter. So we're able to extract oil that normally we couldn't extract to use for energy.
Right.
Well, how are we going to replace the water? We all know with global warming, if the planet warms up enough, the Greenland melts, there will be 20 feet higher of nice fresh water.
You know, that's true. We're not going to have a water. Well, it might be salt water, though.
Yeah, no. Greenland has fresh water.
Fresh water.
Yeah, but it's going into the ocean if it
Then
does
it'll turn into salt water.
But
Okay,
they have to
you just can't say, okay, I hate fracking just because it ruins the environment. You can't just
No.
do that, because you can take that with any technology. I hate flying airplanes because I know one year
Right.
an airplane crashed and killed a bunch of people.
Right.
So hence I hate
And plenty of
airplanes.
people, yeah, and I'll add to what you just said. Plenty of people are in small planes. You know, they say,
Yeah,
okay,
small
I want to
planes,
use a jet to go to the Hamptons. I want to get a jet across the country. They know the risks are higher. I mean,
There's a risk in
Kennedys, you know, one of the Kennedys, we've seen other famous
There's-
people killed in, you know, small plane
There's
accidents.
risk in driving your
So
automobile.
again, it's cost benefit.
It's a
We know
cost
personal.
benefit analysis. And so what you have to do is you got to look at what's the cost, what's the benefits, and then determine whether or not you should continue that. The real problem we have with our politicians, they don't go through that cost benefit analysis. They just say, it seems like you have an infection on your leg. Let's just cut it off.
Yeah.
Okay. And they don't say, well, there's a cost to that because I can't walk anymore, and there would be a benefit if I just let the leg try to heal itself or do another method. So I think with fracking, it's become a political, not a scientific issue. And because of that, I'm out.
Yeah.
In
So we have,
other words, I can't.
Nick,
you can't
That's
endorse.
a good point. Risk analysis versus the benefits, and
Right.
you do have a good point there. I mean, I hate saying it this way, and I guess I got very emotional and passionate about it whenever I saw, a lot of people die on a rig because it blows, or in fracking, it does cause a lot of environmental issues, or it could be under my house. But in all reality, if you weigh the risk versus benefit ratio, the amount of deaths are very small. It's like you said, one plane crashes, do you stop flying? So I agree with you on that. I mean, but there are things that we could do to make them safer and reduce the risk.
All right. So
But
let me jump in.
they cut corners. They cut.
Well, let me jump in because you're both making good points, but I think it's even more complex and bigger, some of these issues. I mean, because here's what I dug up, and this is a complex issue. This is not easy. Again, it's not.
You dug up on your fracking.
I'm going to bring Daniel Jurgen in on this one.
Well, if you would, sure. He's
I'm going to.
well known. So listen to these points, and this is why it's complex, like many issues. Number one, 4 negatives, and I was shocked by some of the things that I found out. Fracking leaks millions of tons of methane, which is a more dangerous greenhouse gas than more potent than carbon dioxide. And the U.S., particularly, which does a lot of fracking, accounts for more methane production than 164 other countries in the world combined. That's a negative. Negative number 2, people say it uses large amounts of water. It does use large amounts of water. 3, some say that it threatens water supplies. And also a big one is that there's been fear of seismic activities and meaning earthquakes. And in Oklahoma, I think it was 2011, there were a lot of earthquakes by fracking sites. It's very suspected that was related to that. So now for very positive, it's a very inexpensive way to get gas and oil out of the ground. I mean, that's obvious. 2, petroleum companies, I didn't know this, but petroleum companies are actually developing non-hydraulic fracking methods where they won't be using a lot of water. So that could solve the water objection of the supplies. And also, actually, if you look at the actual amounts of pollution caused by it, rather than the fear of it, everybody's, oh, it's going to destroy the water. But the fracking is very deep to begin with. It goes below lakes, below rivers generally. And so there haven't been a lot of actual incidences of pollution by fracking. There's been some, but not as much as you'd expect given the fear that's out there. So that's the counter argument there. Here's a big one. In the 1980s and 1990s, and before that, since the 1950s, actually, there was a concept called peak oil. And basically it said, the world does not have an endless supply of oil or natural gas. Of course it doesn't. And we're using it up pretty quickly. Now, there were forecasts 20, 30 years ago that by now, and even by 2010, by 2008, a lot of the forecasts, we'd be running out of oil and gas. But fracking has greatly expanded the capacity to get oil and gas out of the ground. And that's partly because what Kim said, they can go sideways. It's much more efficient. And the whole method of just forcing it out of the ground. And finally, we look at the actual statistics, which complicates it too. Right now in the US, 95% of new wells are all using fracking. So if you say no fracking, what happens to the 95% of wells? I mean, they stop using the most efficient way. And it now already provides 2/3 of US natural gas and crude oil. So you say no fracking, okay, maybe the price of oil and gas doubles, or we can't get as much, it's supply and demand. And so this is an extremely complex issue. Hopefully technology will help solve some of these issues down the road. But what do you think, Kim and Nick?
As I say, it's not that easy. It just
It
depends. And see, that's one problem you have when people just jump up, I'm for it, I'm against it. Right. And the fact is the issue is complex. And that's part of the reason I said you really have to do a cost benefit analysis. And also, it also depends on where you frack. In other words, we did that work when they were trying to exploit minerals near a place where I live. If somebody said, hey, Peter, we want to do some fracking in your neighborhood with a bunch of residential people that's next to a pond, which everybody drinks water out of, that's a problem. But in reality, a lot of this is done in the western parts, in these vacant land. No one lives there, Peter.
Right.
Like the Balkan oil fields in North Dakota. I've driven by there, and there's nobody there.
There's a lot of land out there.
There's a lot of land out there.
You can drive a long time between towns. Yeah.
Yeah, no one lives there. And so the thing is, the impact it has on us is really very, very low. In other words, the thing is the environmental. But I think what we really need to do, it's just like the argument with the pipelines. I'm against pipelines because you'll love the reason. It may burst and kill the environment. Well, that means you should never fly on a plane. You should never drive a car, because if you drive a car, you may run into an auto accident and you may kill yourself or injure somebody. Never drive a plane. Never get in an airplane.
Exactly. Never play. We have to ban football. Which some people think we should.
Because
people do argue for banning football. Look,
right.
People
you could die of a heart attack.
Severely hurt the other.
So we really have to take a serious look at and do a proper cost.
Yeah, exactly. It's complex. I want to add something.
All bad or all good.
What you just said, because you reminded me. So the seismic, the earthquakes. Because people are afraid of that, but. Around Oklahoma, what happened is they stopped doing fracking near the fault lines, which was good advice. But now since then, there's no, to my knowledge, that I can find anything major seismic activity. And it wasn't that major then, by the way, but it was of concern to the community. But now they've said, okay, we're not going to frack near fault lines, which makes perfect sense. I mean, you don't want to disturb that. But if they go away from fault lines, which is most of the area in Oklahoma, most of the country, I don't think there's any evidence of further earthquakes. So that's one fear, that can be mitigated. But, the methane is another thing. I mean, the biggest issue right now is climate change versus energy. And, as I've said on the show and so many times, you should be helping both. And instead, the policies of the U.S. and the developed world are hurting both. You're causing worse pollution, worse supplies of energy, and it's not changing. The people are asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, but I
People use
can't get you to donate to me unless I tell you
Right.
that your hellfire and damnation is going to come upon you unless
Right.
you stop this. So the real problem we have, a lot of non-governmental organizations out there, they need to sell the extreme positions
Right.
in order so that they can get donations. And that's really what's going on out there. And that's the reason you see this to be a crazy war cry off of something that should be looked at more intelligently.
Just like we just covered on Wall Street Hackers as the discussion today. Why is politics so divided in the country? And we looked at, and we all came up with, the media number one, because they don't want to alienate their, they want to drive people who agree with them. So the blues get the blue clients, audiences, the red get the red. That's what we said, but also the money, follow the money. And again,
follow the money, right?
You get your more extreme people, they're going to donate or do extreme positions. They'll go out and work for you because they think the world's ending one side or the other. And so, but again, follow the money, follow the power, but that doesn't mean the solution.
I got one question. I mean, changing the subject, we're at the hour. Are eggs a good investment now?
You're asking the wrong guy. They've gone up so much.
Okay, I'll help you out. The thing is,
because I have a dozen in my refrigerator.
Okay, you may want to sell them because the cholesterol in the eggs, there's some studies going now the other way. They could create heart disease.
Really? I've heard the opposite. Wait, I'm
going
to take
no. That was from the egg industry. Okay.
No, I've seen other studies. Maybe. Never mind. We're not going to get into it.
I just pulled another study out. It's over here somewhere.
Really? All right, I'll have to look. I thought eggs were okay. Some people only want the whites, but we won't delve into that too much. Bottom line is, if I was looking at the egg industry, I'd do my usual Wall Street Hackers analysis. Say, is there a dividend? Eggs don't pay a dividend. So, and then I would say, is there any cash flow for the egg? No, not really. So then, if I don't get a dividend and good cash flow supporting it, I'm like, then it's just going to Vegas and put it on red and black. You can bet in the commodities market, in anything, But the market is priced for supply and demand, so we're going to stay away from the egg market for now.
So, Peter, you ready to wrap with me?
Yes. Okay. So wait. You know what to say, right? Don't get healthy, get wealthy.
Okay, let's do it.
Right. Time it right. Okay. Ready? Get
healthy.
Get wealthy.
Get wealthy.
All right, good show. Thanks. That was fun, Kim. That was it.